Hello, it's Miss Fuller in the house. Today I just want to share some tips, what I learned from my experience of being shortlisted for Apprentice 10. The first point I want to highlight here that I learned was sometimes people see things in you that you directly take for granted. You know, when I was just getting on with my merry life, day-to-day life, my children's grandfather approached me and said, Sherelle, you know, me thinks you should apply for that program there, talking about Apprentice 10, because he was aware that they were actually recruiting for candidates for this year's 2014 The Apprentice. Now, me being the person I am, I was thinking, nah, I'm not going on that show. I'm not gonna go up there and do that. I'm a social entrepreneur by heart, and the only social entrepreneur I know that's been on there was Melody. And from when I've actually spoken to Melody and done interviews with Melody, you know, she explained various points to me, and after reflecting on some of the stuff that she said and what my children's granddad said, I thought to myself, it's actually about investment. It's not a job, is it? You know, and I was looking for investment for my job, for my business. So I was thinking, I don't know, still iffing and butting. Then my sister comes along and keeps on sending me the link for it on Facebook, and I was thinking, oh please. And then she kept on saying, come on sis, it's your time, you need to do it. Anyway, after some persuasion, at the 23rd hour, it was actually got to be on a Sunday night at 12 AM. Now, midnight. My internet was messing about. I filled in the form, and my form actually went in at 11:59, and it was accepted. So then I submitted my form and didn't think much more about it really, you know, but I thought to myself, if I'm going to enter, I'm going to ensure that I do my best and put my best foot forward. Then I get back a response saying, you know, you've been shortlisted for Apprentice 10, you know, interviewing and so coming for the not interview, sorry, I mean audition process. Now, there's only certain things I can share with you about this because I'm actually bound by confidentiality. This is the second point. You know, the first point being people see in you things that you might not see in yourself, and you go for it, and you should just go for it. Number two is, you know, the process is absolutely brilliant in relation to how everything's automated, how the team work together, how the producers work, you know, just the way it's actually, how it's operated. Although Lord Sugar isn't involved in that element, and, you know, those producers might not know everything he's looking at for, they've been briefed, and, you know, they've got a job to do, and things were running to plan when I went there, which was brilliant. However, the third thing I learnt was, as I approached the venue and I got, you know, fixed myself in the mirror to make sure I was, you know, suitable and presentable, etc. Because I'm always known for my hair always being a bit flyaway, because I do have natural hair, which I try to press sometimes. Anyway, I'm actually going off the topic, aren't I, slightly. The third point is, I actually entered the building. Now, when I entered, because it's quite strict, as I mentioned, you know, you give your information in, and I was greeted by a security guard. He actually says to me, you know, who you are, and there were some other people, only a couple of fellas, and a girl, another young lady, another African Caribbean girl. Now, as soon as she seen me walk through the door, she put her head down, and she didn't look at me. You know, and she just kept her head down. Now, my point to you is, regardless if somebody's your competition or not, you've got, what do you bring to the table? You need to raise your head, raise your standards and show confidence, because at the end of the day, you're there to put forward your idea. And, you know, even with anything, when you're showing up for a job interview, prospective clients, you've got to actually know that what you're promoting rocks. So, you know, that was the second thing I learned. Third thing I learned, which I couldn't stop laughing in my head, I had to actually bite my cheeks. Because when you get upstairs, as I said, I can't really say much about the process. You're in silence. All I can say is you're in silence. But prior to that, you have to hand in your documentation. Now, there was another person by me, as I was actually sorting my stuff out. And the guy says to the lady, what did he say? Oh yeah, that's it. Let me get my thoughts process sorted. He's gone. Excuse me, I've only put an hour parking on my my car. Do you know how long we'll be? Now, I just thought to myself, It actually says on the form, some people maybe have a short process, other people might be there for much longer. However, how can you come in to a competition and say you've only put one hour on your car? Now, you haven't arrived. You haven't put anything in place in relation to contingencies. You haven't even bothered to think to yourself, if there's any delays. What is this guy thinking? At the end of the day, he's self-sabotaging before he even gets through, because he hasn't even put enough parking on. You know, if you haven't got the money, people, catch public transport, get a lift in. That's ridiculous. But some people had travelled, so I understand that. But come on, it's ridiculous. I think that's the third point. Okay, the fourth point I learnt was, you know, people keep on talking about this elevator pitch and showing you've got value and all this, you know, and you've got, you know, from anything from 60 to 2 minutes to get your pitch across. You might not even get that long to even say who you are and make an impact, you know, or, you know, so you've got to actually be able to do that in less than 10 seconds. Because at the end of the day, if you don't connect with people, people ain't going to want to know. And if you bore them, you're gone. Now, I'm glad that, you know, that never happened to me. However, when I was waiting for another part of the process, you know, as I mentioned, you're not allowed to speak. This guy was smiling at me, and he sat next to me, and he said, "Oh, well done. Well done. I'm glad we got through, but I know I'm not going to get through, but I'm just glad to get this far." Now, I had to smile at him. I said, "Don't say that, because you're not allowed to talk." So I just smiled and said to him, "Don't say that," quietly, because if they hear me talking, I'm going to jeopardize my position. And I just thought to myself, wow, out of thousands of people, he's been shortlisted to come here. And his attitude is, his mindset is, boy, I'm just glad to be here. I know I'm not going to get through. Self-sabotage. If you don't believe in what you're doing, why should anybody else believe in it? You know, Lord Sugar is putting up how many thousands of pounds to invest in your business, and you're sitting there with your competition saying, "Oh, I'm just glad to get this far." No, that's not a champion's mindset at all. Then I think the fifth thing I learned was, you know, I've given birth to children naturally. So, regardless of what people put in front of me, I'm stronger than what I anticipate. You know, I can get through it regardless of what it's going to be. I can get through it. You know, like as having my children, sometimes you just have to step back, breathe in, and release it, you know. And the final thing I learned about my apprentice journey is, just because you might not get to the final hurdle, it might not be your time in relation to where you're at, or God, it might not be in God's plan at that time for you. you do have to stay away. I've got a young family. You do have to stay away from your family for a long time. However, I'm prepared to do that. But maybe it wasn't for me this time. But you know what? When God says yes, nobody can say no. So if you've got a dream and you want to do something, follow it, pursue it, do what you've got to do, and make it happen, people. That's what I learned about my Apprentice 10.